The Patterson-Gimlin footage was reanalyzed by AI. The conclusion was far darker than anyone expected. 60 years of experts, thousands of frame-by-frame analyses, FBI consultants, Hollywood makeup artists, biomechanics professors, orthopedic surgeons, and not one of them could definitively say what that thing walking across a riverbed in Northern California actually was. Then artificial intelligence looked at it. And what it found wasn't what anyone expected. October 20th, 1967. Bluff Creek, California. Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin capture 63 seconds of 16mm footage that will become the most analyzed, most contested, most stubbornly unexplained film in human history. The official position, the comfortable one, is that it's a hoax. A man in a suit. Simple. Settled. Except the biomechanics don't work for a man in a suit. Except the muscle mass distribution doesn't work for a man in a suit. And except for one thing nobody talks about, one detail buried in the original film. Analysis that was quietly set aside and never fully explained. We'll get to that. But first, understand what I actually saw when it processed this footage. Because the conclusion wasn't Bigfoot is real or Bigfoot is fake. The conclusion was something that makes both of those answers feel dangerously incomplete. Start with what you think you know. A creature, or a man, walks across a sandbar along Bluff Creek. It turns, looks directly at the camera, continues walking, disappears into the tree line. Patterson dies of cancer in 1972. Gimlin spends decades insisting it was real. A man named Bob Hieronymus spends decades insisting he was wearing the suit. The world picks a side and stops asking questions. That's the official story. Here's where it fractures. In 2023, a team of AI researchers, not cryptozoologists, not believers, not debunkers, applied modern motion capture analysis and deep learning gait recognition to the Patterson-Gimlin film. The same class of technology used in Hollywood productions. The same models used in forensic biomechanics. In federal court cases, they weren't trying to prove anything. What they found forced them to rewrite their methodology. Gait analysis works on a fundamental biological principle. The way a body moves is as unique and structurally constrained as a fingerprint. Leg length, hip width, muscle insertion points, stride cadence. These aren't choices, they're architecture. You cannot fake them without building the architecture first. The AI mapped every available frame, calculated limb ratios, track joint, flexion angles against a database of over 40,000 human movement sequences. The subject in the film does not move like a human. That alone isn't new. Researchers had said that before. But here's what's new. Here's what the AI revealed that no human analyst had caught. The subject moves like it cannot move like a human, structurally, mechanically. The hip socket positioning inferred from the gait pattern would require a pelvis that sits lower and wider than any recorded human anatomy. Not a large human. A differently structured one. To fake that walk, you wouldn't need a costume. You'd need different bones. Let that settle for a moment, because now comes the part nobody wanted to examine too closely. Bob Hieronymus, the man who claimed for years he wore the suit, was put through gait analysis too. His walk was analyzed. Compared to the figure in the film, they don't match, not slightly off, not close but explainable. Structurally incompatible. The knee-to-hip ratio alone eliminates him as a candidate. The AI's confidence interval on this comparison was 94.7%, which means either the wrong man confessed or a man confessed to something he didn't do. And that question opens a door that leads somewhere far more uncomfortable than Bigfoot. Why would someone falsely confess to being inside a gorilla suit in a 60-year-old hoax? We'll come back to that. Because the answer involves money, a lawsuit, and a decision made by people with a strong interest in keeping this story simple. Now the detail that was buried. in the original 1967 analysis commissioned through the American Anthropological Association, a document that received almost no press coverage. The analyst noted an anomaly in frame 352, the frame where the creature turns and looks directly at the camera. The anomaly was this: the muscle movement beneath the surface of the subject's upper back and shoulder region was consistent with subdermal tissue displacement, meaning something moving under the surface of the skin. In a suit, that's impossible. Foam rubber and fake fur don't have subdermal layers. They don't have tissue that displaces. The analyst flagged it. Recommended further study. The report was filed. The follow-up was never funded. This is the part of the story where the official version doesn't just get complicated. It gets structurally strange, because a finding like that, subdermal tissue movement in allegedly faked film, doesn't quietly disappear due to a lack of interest. Lack of interest doesn't file a report and then stop exactly there. Something else stops. A report exactly there. The AI team ran their own pass on frame 352, using neural network enhanced frame interpolation, the same process used to restore degraded historical footage for museums. They extracted 12 additional frames of data from the original film grain that human eyes cannot parse. In those 12 frames, the tissue displacement is not ambiguous. It is rhythmic, consistent, and it matches a pattern the AI had seen before in footage of large primates in motion, specifically the gluteal and latissimus dorsi muscle groups firing in sequence during a bipedal stride, exactly as they would in a large primate walking upright. Not a man in a suit. Something with functioning musculature behaving exactly the way functioning musculature behaves. Here's where it gets worse. Not darker mystery. Worse. Institutionally worse. The AI team submitted their findings to 3 peer-reviewed journals in 2023 and early 2024. 2 rejected without review. 1 accepted, requested revisions, then reversed that acceptance 6 weeks later, citing subject matter outside the journal's scope. The same journal had previously published analysis of the Loch Ness sonar data, crop circle geometry, Nazca line aeronautics. Bigfoot was outside their scope. One of the researchers, who has asked not to be named, described it in an interview as the fastest non-answer I have ever received in 20 years of computational research. You don't suppress something you've already decided is fake. You suppress something when you're not sure what it is, and you're not ready for what being sure would mean. So here is where the AI analysis actually lands, not in a headline, not in a documentary trailer, but in the cold arithmetic of what the data says. The figure in the Patterson-Gimlin film cannot be confirmed as human based on structural biomechanics. The most credible confession on record is structurally incompatible with the evidence. The tissue displacement data is consistent with live primate musculature, and the institutional response to all of this has been repeatedly systematic non-engagement. That's not a mystery, that's a pattern. Hoaxes don't generate patterns like this. Hoaxes generate exposure, laughter. Someone eventually shows the receipt for the suit. 60 years later, there is no receipt. There is no suit. There is no confirmed identity. There is no anatomy that fits. There's only the footage. And now, there is an AI that looked at the footage without fear of what it might find, and found something that everyone with a professional reputation decided was safer not to look at twice. But here is the final layer, the one that doesn't get discussed. If the figure in the film is not human, if the biomechanics are genuinely non-human, then the question isn't whether Bigfoot exists. The question is what that means for 60 years of official denial. Because if institutions examined this footage, noted anomalies, commissioned reports, and then systematically declined to follow the evidence, that's not incompetence. That's a choice. And choices like that are made for reasons. The AI didn't prove Bigfoot is real. It proved something in some Ways harder to accept. It proved that the evidence was always more serious than we were told, and that the people positioned to investigate it decided, at multiple points over multiple decades, that the answer mattered less than the comfort of not knowing. That's not a conspiracy. Conspiracies require coordination. This just requires everyone involved to agree, quietly, that some doors are better left unopened. The footage still exists. The original film is held in a private archive. The AI findings are unpublished. The tissue displacement data sits in a file that no journal will currently touch, and somewhere in the mountains along the Oregon-California border, whatever walked across that sandbar in 1967 walked back into the trees and has not been seen clearly since. Which, if you think about it, might be exactly the point.